How's it going, guys? Believe it or not, no, you are actually not back in 2012. I am in fact making an advice FTR in 2020. This one's about gaslighting, and I haven't really made a FTR, not just about advice, but about like the way people behave in a long ass fucking time. Go check my FTR videos, they're crazy. But this is something a friend of mine actually brought up, and I thought this is an amazing topic. And I can only really give one tip for this because that's all that really exists. But it's an important topic. Now, I've talked about people who have this behavior before, but usually in relation to something else. I haven't made a specific video about this behavior and given advice on it. So let's get right into it. Basically, gaslighting is the idea of somebody treating you a certain way, but guilting you to the point where you start believing that it's your fault. The most common form of gaslighting is done in relationships in many different ways, but usually in relationships of some kind. It also happens with parents and things like that, but I think it's most common in relationships, and that's also what the studies show. Common examples might be, let's say a girl is cheating, and the guy is bringing it up to her, like, I know you're cheating, I saw you do it, whatever. And the girl will gaslight him by saying something like, oh, you're just crazy, you're making it up, you're imagining things, or you're saying that I'm cheating because you're the one who's probably doing it and you're just pushing your own blame and guilt on me. These are tactics of gaslighting. Now, there are times when you might feel gaslighted, but it's not actually happening. For example, it's important to realize when it's actually happening to you. One of the most common things that people might make a mistake on is that because the person who's gaslighting you will often make you feel as if you're the one who forgot something and that's why they're pushing on their idea on you, it's possible that you actually did forget something and the person isn't really trying to gaslight you at all. And when you're fighting back about a memory that you lost, unfortunately, you end up being the gaslighter. So it's extremely important to recognize when it's happening and that you're not just having a memory issue. These things are a lot more rare. Studies show that people who think they're being gaslighted but really just forgot what happened are actually a very small percentage, because usually in situations like gaslighting, which are very big, it's hard to forget or misinterpret these kind of situations. But that doesn't mean they're impossible. So always be well aware if you are in fact being gaslighted by somebody and not just thinking that you are. There are many tips I can give as to how to cope with gaslighting or how to stop it from happening entirely. But one of the biggest points about this is talking to somebody. Talking to somebody is the absolute best way to stop, prevent, or cope with gaslighting. Because you need to understand, the important point about gaslighting is the person who's doing it to you will actually get in your head and genuinely convince you that you remember stuff wrong and you're actually victimizing the other person. So what you need is reassurance. Always talk to a third-party person. It can be a friend, whatever. And always make sure that you tell them what the situation is and what you said and the other person said. That way they can give you an unbiased look if you actually are being gaslighted or if you're just misinterpreting the whole situation. It's very rare that somebody who's being gaslighted are able to see it for themselves. Why? Well, because the entire purpose of gaslighting is to literally convince the person that they've done something wrong. The gaslighter will manipulate you, they will brainwash you, they will genuinely convince you that they're doing nothing wrong and any problems that do exist are on you. So how can you possibly acknowledge gaslighting or stop it or cope with it if you don't even know that it's happened or you've been convinced that you're the problem even though the other person is the problem? This is why the third-party person is so important. Do not ever, if this happens to you, do not ever let it get to the point where you're afraid to tell someone about it, because another thing that happens very often with gaslight victims is that if they are led to believe that they're the problem, then they're not going to talk about it, right? They will more often have a mindset like, I'm the problem, I need help, I need to fix myself, I need to stop hurting him or her. If they see themselves as the problem, why would they seek help if they are the problem? The most that they'll do is seek help for how they can stop being abusive, but they're doing nothing wrong, so the help will go nowhere. You have to acknowledge what help you need and how to get that help. This is why you should never let the gaslighting keep going on for months and months or years and years, because at that point you've already almost like forgot that it's happening or don't notice it anymore. Every time it happens, like when you start off, you might notice it in very small examples with things your partner might say, or if they accuse you of doing something that you're pretty sure you're not really doing. Go to a friend. Go to the friend and say, hey, I had this really weird interaction with my partner. He said I did this, but I really said and did this. And always make sure to quote yourself and quote the other person that you believe is gaslighting you. That third party person can look at the situation in unbiased light and go, that's really weird that they would accuse you of that as soon as you said this and this, you know? So that's why it's so important to always talk to a third person, because they can give you an unbiased look. And then before things get really bad for you psychologically, you can get out of the situation. But just to give you a few hints, here's one of the most common examples of gaslight phrases that a person might say to you. For example, let's say that the gaslighter, the person who's doing it, has lost their job. Instead of them taking responsibility for their job, they might come up to you, the victim, and say, you know what, I lost my job and it's all your fault. The fact that you're always arguing with me or making loud noise at night and I can't sleep, that's what made me unproductive at work and that's why I quit. If a person is pushing their own personal blame on you, chances are you're being gaslighted. And that's one of the most obvious examples. So if you see that or examples like that, chances are it is happening and you should talk to somebody right away. It's hard to cope with because you can't just like push that person out of your life, especially if they're a parent. If they're a partner, then of course you can if you feel that's the best alternative. But if it's a parent, you can't exactly just get away from it unless you plan on moving out of your parents' house. But if you're young, you can't move out of your parents' house. So the best way is to not necessarily stop it, because unfortunately you can't, but you can cope with it. And you do that by always talking to the closest people to you and telling them the situation so that they can give you a third unbiased look and reassure you, which is the most important thing, that you are not the one doing something wrong. That's the most important thing, for the record.